Back in 2008, General Motors received a $51 billion bailout in order to keep the business afloat. And they're thanking us now by essentially getting rid of nearly 15,000 jobs. General Motors announced that it would not assign products in 2019 to auto assembly plants in Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, in Canada, and auto parts factories in Michigan and also Maryland. So the total outcome of jobs lost should be around 15,000, which is pretty devastating, especially when you learn about the details regarding how they opened some of these plants in the country. Now, GM also revealed an impending 15% cut to its corporate workforce and the elimination of 25% of executive roles. The cutbacks would save the company $6 billion by the end of 2020, but cost roughly 15,000 jobs. And also General Motors on Monday pulled the plug on the Chevy Volt hybrid and the assembly plant in Detroit that builds it.
And they're getting rid of some of the Chevrolet, Cadillac, and Buick vehicles, which is a surprise to me because I wasn't aware they still had Buick vehicles. It's the Buick Skyhawk is the first car I ever had. The steering wheel stopped working after a while. Anyway, but I love the car. But I'm a hokey, corny guy. In fact, you know what? In the post game, I'll tell you a story about how I almost died in that car. Okay. So tyt.com/join to become a member and get more coverage that we give to the members. I'll tell you that story there. Okay, now on to the important stuff in this story. Look, the idea that Donald Trump was going to bring back your jobs was hilarious. And so the good people of Ohio, Michigan, et cetera, that voted for him, surprise, he was lying. Okay, but that's standard stuff. Now, let me tell you what really frustrates me. And it's not just Donald Trump, it's Democratic politicians as well. So Donald Trump says, I said this country's done a lot for General Motors. You better get back in there soon. That's Ohio, and you better get back in there soon. He also said, I have no doubt that in the not too distant future, they'll put something else. They better put something else in. They're not gonna put anything else in. I mean, what kind of a childish, stupid thing is that to think? Oh, no, and he said, oh, they messed with the wrong guy. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean anything?
Like, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna try to bully them on social media? I mean, you've given these corporations everything that they can want. I mean, you gave them a massive corporate tax break while selling this ridiculous notion that they're going to use those tax savings to create jobs. What happened? Did they create jobs? And more importantly, were quality jobs created? No, quality jobs were not created. Now, he likes to tout this impressive unemployment rate, which is low. I'll give him credit for that, right? Even though it was started under the Obama administration, but whatever, fine. Those jobs are crap, which is why many Americans right now are working full time and they still need government aid in order to make ends meet. They're not good jobs. What these corporations have done with their tax savings is basically buy shares of their own stock, and that's it. I mean, stock buybacks have been record amounts lately.
Yeah, and that makes executives incredibly rich because they have a lot of stock options, but you get thrown out of your job. But all this is and again, unfortunately, the media aids and abets this because there's this mythology about how there's corporate America. No, there is no corporate America. They don't care, GM doesn't care about America at all. GM is a machine. It's a profit maximizing machine. By law, they must maximize profit. By law, they are not allowed to be patriotic. They're not allowed to care about stocks. So I'm going to give you more absurd quotes from politicians, but understand what happened with the stock market in GM as soon as they fired all these people or announced they were going to fire them. Their stock soared. It didn't go down, it went up. They were greatly rewarded by the market that said, congratulations on firing 15,000 people. We think that's a brilliant decision on your part. What do you think they're gonna do? You think they're gonna reverse course because Trump sent a mean tweet? No, they just all made, the executives all just made huge amounts of money by the stock price going up. They have giant amount of stock options. You know what they're gonna do next time? Fire more people because then their money goes up while your money goes down.
Now, Donald Trump has had some very strong words for General Motors after they announced that they're going to essentially get rid of 15,000 jobs. And so I want to give you a sense of how Trump is pretending to be a tough guy and then the response he's getting from politicians in states like Ohio.
Well, we don't like it. I believe they'll be opening up something else. And I was very tough. I spoke with her when I heard they were closing. And I said, this country's done a lot for General Motors. You better get back in there soon. That's Ohio. And you better get back in there soon. So we have a lot of pressure on them. You have senators, you have a lot of other people, a lot of pressure.
So he's claiming that he's being tough on General Motors, but representatives from states like Ohio, for instance, a representative, Tim Ryan, argue that Trump hasn't lifted a single finger in terms of helping Americans keep their jobs. So let's hear what he had to say.
The president's come out and said he's got the magic wand when it comes to American manufacturing. Your reaction?
Well, it's insulting to the almost 2,000 workers in our factory locally and almost 15,000 workers in Michigan and Ohio, not to mention the 4 to 5 times spinoff. So you're talking 50, 60,000 people, and the president says everything's fine, he's got the magic wand. It's insulting, Aaron, and I tell you what, he did not lift one finger. Sherrod Brown called him. We sent the president letters to try to get him engaged in helping us figure out what the future of this facility is. He was sworn into office. Weeks later, we lost the third shift at our plant. He got rid of the fuel efficiency standards. I warned him not to do that. It would hurt the small car industry. 2 weeks later, we lost the second shift, and now the plant is idle.
So there he is arguing that Trump hasn't really done much, especially for places like Ohio. But in this next clip, he gets a lot more aggressive. Let's hear him out.
This president did not lift one finger. He's got executive time all day. He spends time on Twitter. He does nothing but try to divide the country and start culture wars. And behind the scenes, the American workers getting screwed by a company that got one of his huge tax cuts. I mean, if you look at what happened to General Motors, they got the auto rescue package. Quite frankly, that Mitt Romney was saying, let Detroit go bankrupt, and Democrats stuck their neck out. They just got a huge tax cut to the tune of $150 million this year. And then they turn around, cut 15,000 jobs, and the stock price goes up 6%. So all the executives are making a lot of money. I don't know how much Mary Barra made off of that today, but all the wealthy people made money, and all the people in Youngstown and in Detroit got pink slips. That's a broken economy.
So that's a great segment by Tim Ryan. And so I criticize, look, Tim Ryan's been on the show 100 times, and then I've criticized him recently because I think he's appealing too much to his donors, but that was really well done, okay? But I still think that even with good intention, in this case, Tim Ryan, Sherrod Brown, both from Ohio, and bad intention guys like Trump and Rob Portman, they all misunderstand and misframe the issue, and it's really, really important. So let me give you some of their quotes in that regard. Tim Ryan said, GM has turned its back on us when we needed them the most. But GM is not a person, Tim. It's not a person. It didn't spite you. It's a profit-making machine. So if it makes more money by cutting those jobs, it will cut those jobs. So that's not the issue. The issue is ever giving them a tax break and thinking that they'll be patriotic. Now, it's preposterous. The only reason that we have that kind of talk is because those guys bribe politicians on both sides. More Republicans, that's absolutely true, but Democrats too. Then Rob Portman says, they let Northeast Ohio down. It's like talking to a microwave and saying, you let me down, microwave. You know, I can't believe you did that. You know what? You turned your back on me when I needed you most. I needed you to cook that Hot Pocket and you wouldn't do it. You broke down and you let me down. You're having a conversation with a machine. GM is not a person. It's not a human being. By law, they must maximize profit. I'm not saying that to let them off the hook. I'm saying that so you stop believing politicians when they talk about nonsense things like corporate America and how they're American and they care about you and they're gonna get back in there and they're gonna help you out. No, they're not. They're gonna screw you in every way imaginable if it makes them one more penny.
In fact, I want to add a little more detail to what you're saying, because you're absolutely right. And I think what we experience with GM is what we're likely to experience in the future with Amazon. Maybe not under the same conditions, maybe not the exact same outcome. But remember, Amazon got all these like sweetheart deals in Virginia and in New York, because supposedly they're gonna create all these jobs and it's gonna be great for the local economy. So they get all these tax breaks and all these subsidies. And the same thing happened with General Motors, okay? And General Motors did not deliver. So I'm gonna give you a sense of how much they've received in both federal subsidies and also state level subsidies. So when it comes to federal grants and tax credits, since the year 2000, General Motors has received $943.5 million in subsidies, okay? All right, so that's on the federal level, and Trump is threatening to take subsidies away from General Motors, and we'll see if he follows through on that. I mean, no one loves corporations more than Donald Trump does, so we'll see what happens. But on the state level, General Motors has received a lot more, okay, from places like Ohio and Michigan. So $5.4 billion, billion with a B, since the year 2000.
Yeah, and then Senator Sherrod Brown, who's a good guy and one of the more progressive senators, said this decision is corporate greed at its worst. And I know what he's trying to say, and I appreciate that he's going after corporate greed, but I want you to understand there is no such thing as corporate greed. Everything corporation does is greed by definition. They must, I mean, how many times do I have to say this? But apparently $1 billion, because it's not getting through to anybody in Washington or anybody on TV. They must maximize profit. It is greed by definition. If you give them $5.4 billion in subsidies, you know what they owe you? Nothing. They owe you nothing at all. They're not a person. They're like, oh, well, Sherrod Brown and Donald Trump delivered for me. I gotta make sure I deliver for Ohio. No, they don't care. They're not allowed to care. Their stock price just went up by 6%. So of course, the next time they'll take your money and screw you over, because that's their job. So stop, fantasizing about these corporations that are patriotic. No, when you give them a subsidy, they will keep it, and the minute they can, they will crush you for an extra dollar. Look, and I'm not holding it against them. They're amoral, they have no morality. But the idea that our politicians keep putting out there for their own personal gain, why? Because those same corporations give them campaign contributions. This private financing of elections that we have in America is corruption defined. It's a sickness. And it's destroyed our country. And every time there's shock and chagrin, GM didn't care about the people of Ohio and Michigan. Really, Sherlock? You just figured that out. Well, congratulations to you. And finally, it's not that Trump didn't just lift a finger and he didn't do anything to help those people and he lied to them during the campaign. His imports, tariffs on imported steel and aluminum have spiked production costs, making it more costly to produce in America. So that is part of the reason why they're outsourcing the jobs. And when it gets to a certain price, they outsource. That's just a fact. But Trump's like, oh no, they'll get back in there. They'll get back in there. No, they won't. You're a schmuck. You don't know anything about the economy. You don't know anything about business. And you don't know anything about anything that's gonna help these workers. All you did was you scammed them, and that's what you know. You lived a whole life as a scam artist. And so this is what we get. We get layoff after layoff under Donald Trump. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.